I'm stacking love on top of love on top of love on top of love. And what that amounts to is that I consider these love languages basic, very basic for and basic stair steps to get to the higher love laws like compassion or charity or forgiveness or sympathy or empathy.
Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more month than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident. Good day and welcome to Give a Heck. On today's show, I welcome Paul Zolman. Paul has created a new way to demonstrate the principles of the love languages. It's a profound way to learn all 5 love languages to give them away. By giving them away, your vision will improve to the point that you can see them coming your way and respond appropriately. The system is so easy that even young children can be trained in this love-giving system. Spoiler alert, it's a game where everyone wins. God in his wisdom has placed us in a variety of circumstances that require us to find our way back to his pure love. So what qualifies Paul Zolman to speak about love? His childhood experience of the opposite of love. From that austere beginning and the distaste it formed inside of him, he searched for and eventually created a method that transformed his life from anger to loving everyone. Growing up in a family of abuse, physical touch became his preferred love style only because of the regularity. He could almost count on it. It was consistent. He came to think that was the way to express love. But deep inside, he knew that was a twisted belief. He wanted a better life for himself, which is why he created a paradigm shift that works. In his book, you'll find what helped Paul move from a childhood boot camp of abuse to being a person who loves everyone and can find good about anyone in any circumstance. This is truly the role of love. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Paul. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on and share with us some of your life journey.
Thank you, Dwight. Pleasure to be with you today.
Yeah, my pleasure. I appreciate you investing time in my listeners and viewers and being willing to be vulnerable and share with us. So, Paul, I talked to you a little bit about this at the beginning before we started hitting record. I'd like to focus on initially a person's origin story. Key things from your childhood to adulthood that led you where you are currently. So feel free to share whatever you would like so that our listeners can know, like, and trust you even sooner.
Thank you, Dwight. I appreciate that. That's a great question, and I appreciate the freedom to tell that story. I want to start just one generation back from that, though. I want to start with my grandfather, and this is all I know about my grandfather. I don't know much about my great-grandfather, but let's start with my grandfather. He lived in Indiana in the United States, and in the late 1800s, early 1900s, married, had 9 children. After the 9th child was born, his wife passed away suddenly. We don't know if it was part of the childbirth complications that way or what exactly, but he was very distraught, as anybody would be in losing their spouse. So in that circumstance, he made a choice. He decided he was going to sell the farm and sell all the equipment. When he had that auction or had that sale event, when people would come, he would say something like this: "And would you like this child? And would you like this child? And would you like this child?" Until he systematically had given all the children away except for one. He took that one child with him to Montana, found a school teacher that had never been married had 10 more children, of which my father is number 6. So this man has 19 children. So when my father was born in 1922, and when he's 10 years old, this grandfather of mine passes away. So his father passes away. Now, 1932, you realize you're in the middle of a Great Depression and you have these abandonment issues. So this exercise of mental health for my grandfather, obviously dying probably was not his choice at the time. It was not something, he didn't take his own life or anything like that. But just the very fact that the first 9 children were abandoned, now they got 10 more that were abandoned. So these children are growing up with some little holes in their heart. I like to call it holes in our holes in our childhood, or holes in our upbringing, that we all kind of have some in some way and some fashion. My father had this, and in that when he's 10 years old, he has to kind of go to work, and he starts getting the taste of the money, and feeling like he wants to work full time, and went through 8th grade and then stopped going to school and just kept on working. He liked mechanics. He liked tinkering with engines and that sort of thing. So he became a diesel mechanic. Then after that, he became a truck driver. So when I was born, I'm number 10 of 11 children. My father didn't continue the generational thing to have 19 children. He only had 11. Only 11, Dwight. That's it. I'm number 10. And so I'm grateful for that. I just toned it down even more. I only have 8, and my children only have 3. So it's just tapering off quite a bit there. We're changing the generational thing. That's just one funny thing that's being changed. But when my father was a truck driver, he'd be gone all week long. He'd come home on Fridays, and when he came home on Friday, he would absolutely, without fail, take my mother out on a date. Now, it wasn't very creative about the date, Dwight. He always took her to the Maverick Bar. There was always alcohol involved. So as he's becoming imbibed, as couples do when there's been kind of a distance between them, a few days or something, they say, well, how was your week? How was your week? And they just start sharing one another. I can imagine my mother, I was never there, but I can imagine my mother starting out at the oldest child, saying what the oldest child did or didn't do during the week. And so my father's got this problem. He's getting annoyed. As he's coming down the line. He's getting annoyed. I'm number 10. And guess where he's at? He's got so many annoyances stacked up, Dwight. He's ready to blow. And so here I am. I'm either getting the belt or I'm getting the spanking on the weekend. And I remember it was so bad, Dwight, and unfortunately it was bad. I remember one time being black and blue on my rear end for more than 3 weeks because of a severe spanking. I don't ever remember what I did wrong, because I thought I was a good kid, as maybe most kids think they're a good kid until they're not. And then I just thought I was a good kid. I was sandwiched though, and you got to understand my position in the family. Number 10 of 11, I'm sandwiched between 2 girls. I'm a thorn between 2 roses. My father valued women, as he did when he took my mother out every Friday night. He valued women, and he doted on these 2 girls. And I'm the thorn. If I did anything, even look cross-eyed at those girls, I was in for it. And it was just that position in the family. That in addition to all the others were boys, and they would do things. You know how puppies play with each other, Dwight? They'll swat at each other, and they'll wrestle with each other. Well, the boys in our family did the same thing. Only they would break bones, and they were not each other and not mine, but they'd do things that would cause either financial hardship. And my dad knew all about financial hardship because of where he came from in the Great Depression. All that financial hardship, and it was just trying to keep what you had. And it was more of a keep secluded type of attitude of scarcity rather than an attitude of abundance in that way. And so that's kind of the attitude that they had there. Anything anything that went wrong was almost a financial disaster as we grew up. And I just remembered all of that. And I think that probably contributed to the dysfunction of the family, the anger of the family. And then I realized that maybe the only thing I can do to get out of the situation was to move out. So at age 17, after my junior year of high school, I moved out. I moved in with my brother, my older brother, and he has a family already, a couple of children, and he's a great father, absolutely a great father. But he also had this same issue, and I watched it. He'd be annoyed, stacking these annoyances on top of one another, and then he'd flash. He'd have that anger flash. I thought, how do we get out of that? How do we get over anything like that? So I started making goals, and I set a goal that I'm not going to be angry. And the thing about just even a statement like that, Dwight, is that it's like a double negative. And double negatives multiplied together in math make a positive. But in relationships, it doesn't happen that way. It absolutely doesn't happen that way. So that wasn't working for me. So fast forward a little bit. Finally, at age 35, I realized I'm responsible for my own actions. Prior to age 35, I was blaming my father for all this awkwardness in social settings and all the awkwardness at home, all the relationships that were falling apart at home. In social settings, I'd find myself becoming angry. Have you ever seen someone in public angry, Dwight? I mean,
Yes.
how appealing is that? You see people that did come with them start distancing themselves. They're moving away. Everybody else is moving away, giving that person space. And so that social awkwardness is something I blamed on my father. Additionally, in the family, one of my kids was doing something, and then the other kid, and it just started to. I didn't know, and they didn't know when I was going to flash. It would just happen. It was almost a knee-jerk reaction of all those annoyances that had stacked up, and it came to the flash. And I'd have to admit, Dwight, that I think that may be contributory to the demise of my first marriage. So after 23 and a half years, my wife and I parted company, and there were 5 children remaining at the home. I had primary custody of the children. I devised something that I thought was going to be so helpful. I'm not so sure that it was, but I devised an idea that on the days on the weekends that my wife would have the children, I'm going to do this destination dating, where online I'd find a person, they'd be in a different city than me, I'm in a different city, we'd agree on a meeting place, and then we'd have a date. So I called it destination dating. And I had a great time. I went to Jacksonville, Florida, Daytona Beach, Florida, Atlanta, Georgia, Columbia, South Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina, New York City, Nashville, Kansas City, Salt Lake City, Phoenix, Snowflake, Arizona, Cabo San Lucas, Las Vegas, all those places I went for destination dates. And it's kind of like the lyrics of the song, Dwight. I was looking for love in all the wrong places because nothing ever turned out. I thought I had a line on a good relationship on the lady from Phoenix, but then I decided to move there. That was the wrong idea. We weren't there yet. And apparently that caused that relationship to fall apart. So here I am, single in Phoenix. My older sister calls me up and decides that I'm lonely. She says I'm lonely. I said, I'm not really lonely. I'm having a great time. I'm single. My wife at that point, my ex-wife at the time, had taken primary custody of the last 3 children because she was moving in with her parents. And I thought this would be a great opportunity for those last 3 children to really get to know their grandparents. And it was a good choice. So I'm single. I don't have any kids at home anymore. And so she says, I have this neighbor that I want to introduce to you. I said, you're 7 hours away. I've already been destination dating. I spent over $10,000 in a year and a half. I don't want to do it anymore. And she's older sister, and this is kind of my position. She's taken her position. She says, oh, come on. I said, okay. And then I thought, I'll email her. what kind of relationship can you develop emailing, Dwight? Seriously, that's ridiculous. But it wasn't that ridiculous. This lady had a great pen and could write so well in email that it just was kind of intriguing. For example, when I asked her how many times she'd been married, she said, counting the 5 that are buried in the backyard. I just roared with laughter. She was just funny. She just had this great sense of humor that you could do in writing alone. I don't know if I'd laugh as hard as I did reading it as I would if she said it in person, but it was just fun. And so we started to develop this little fun relationship, and that relationship actually blossomed a little bit. We started seeing each other. I'd go from Phoenix to where my sister lived, make the 7-hour drive, arrive at midnight on Friday night, and leave at 5 on Sunday and ride midnight back to Phoenix. And so that was how it went for a couple of months. Then I decided this is getting a little serious. I'm going to move up there. So I moved up there, and it got a little bit more serious. Now it's time for big brother approval. So I take this neighbor of my sister, take her up to my brother. First thing that happens is my sister-in-law pulls her aside right when we get there and says, the only emotion that the Zolman family learned growing up was anger. At first I denied. I said, then it made me mad. I thought, busted. And so I thought, if there's any point, any chance to change that, whatever's been passed on generationally, there's any time to change that, now was the time. So I started reading the color code, and I started reading the 5 love languages. And I really liked the principles of the 5 love languages. Number one, I'm a Christian, and Dr. Chapman, also a Christian, he's a reverend. And he says that those 5 love languages actually relate to the life of Jesus Christ. He did all those 5 love languages during his lifetime. I thought, well, if there's any way to be more like Jesus Christ, maybe this is the way. Maybe this is the path I should follow. So I really like the principles. I did not, from where I came from, Dwight, I did not get the application. You mean, Dwight, I'm supposed to guess what your love language is and then cater to that? And you're calling that love? I came from a place that was angry, and I don't know what love is, but that didn't sound like it either. And then the second thing that Dr. Chapman has is that, well, if I take this survey, then I'll find out what my love language is. Well, Dwight, what am I supposed to do with that? Advertise? Hello, Dwight. I'm gifts. What do you have for me today? Seriously? And you're calling that love too? It's not working for me. So I contacted Dr. Chapman. I said, Dr. Chapman, are you licensing those little icons? Because I had an idea. Are you licensing those icons? And Dr. Chapman had his attorney write me back, said, no, we're not licensing those icons right now. And I said, whew, they're ugly. I don't want them anyway. And so I went to my attorney, and I talked to my copyright attorney here in town. He said that theory is not copyrightable. Application is. So Dr. Chapman wasn't using it as a game. And I remember as a child that games, even in our dysfunctional family, that games pulled us together and brought us together. Even though there's a lot of smack talk going on and a lot of put downs and a lot of that angry behavior going on, it still brought our family together. So I thought, well, I'll make my own icons since they're not licensing. I'll make my own icons, and then I'll make it into the game. So that's what I did. So I made it into a 1 inch by 1 inch cube, and I put each one of the love languages on the cube. So the one I'm holding up now for your audience that's just listening is a person holding a plate like they're serving something. So that's the icon for serve. So I turn the cube. I've got 2 hands put together, making a heart. And from that heart, I have a conversation fly out. So those are the words. On one more side, the hand is holding an hourglass. That's for time. Now I've got a hand holding a gift. That's for gifts. And then 2 hands touching each other. That's for touch. 5 love languages, 6 sides on the cube. The 6th side I created, surprise me. So Dwight, there's just 2 instructions. You roll the die every day. That's the love language you practice giving away all day that day. Now, I want to remind you that I'm single when I'm working with this. So I don't have a significant other to give this away to. So I thought, well, what am I going to do? And I thought, well, I'll just give it away to everybody. That really, for me, Dwight, has been a godsend because it helped me understand that love is constant. Similar to the abuse that I received as a child, I felt like it was constant. It seemed so because it was so regular, it seemed like it was constant, and it kind of has that confusing attribute of being that constancy. This is different. I feel that it's rolling the die every single day and giving it away helps you be more intentional about love. For me, what it did for me is it helped me learn all 5 love languages. When I was studying it, I read the book 4 or 5 times. But after I went through the book 4 or 5 times, if you offered me $1 million to name all 5 love languages, I might get 3. I probably would not get all 5. And I found that very consistent with a lot of people that have read through the book, and they could not name all 5 love languages. You're an exception, I understand, because you've listened and read it several times yourself. But I couldn't do it. So I went through the book, but the book really didn't go through me. So I wanted to change that a little bit and say, well, what do I have control over? And I realized that those annoyances came from things that other people did. I'm not really annoyed at myself because, you always want to keep a high opinion of yourself, but I'm annoyed at other people. And I thought, do I really have any control over what that person chooses to do? And then realized I don't. So stop being annoyed then. Stop being annoyed at what other people are doing. Stay in your lane. And I realized that my lane was I only have power to give love away. I can't bid it to come my way. And it sounds like a manipulation if I bid it to come my way. You get, I think it's an unintended pity party that Dr. Chapman created when he said, that you tell people what your love language is, because it might come down to the point and say, well, I told you what my love language is. How come you're not sending it my way? How come you're not delivering? And you could get to that pity party. I didn't even want to go there. I wanted to understand what the love languages were. So I realized that I only have power to give it away and to respond when it comes my way. But by giving it away, by rolling the die for 30 days, I found I knew the love languages backwards and forwards. I knew what it looked like. I knew how to give it. I knew what it looked like. So that when it came my way, then I could understand it and I could respond appropriately. I didn't have that understanding before from reading the 5 love languages. I did not have that. So what this has done for me is given me that peripheral vision, so to speak, that maybe it's not my primary love language. I see, oh, they're loving on me. It's not my primary love language, but I can see that they're loving on me and then just respond, give it back in kind. So that's kind of how I came to where I'm at right now.
Wow. I love your origin. Thank you so much for sharing. There's so many things that made me smile and nod my head because it is true. There's so much things that we learn behavior from many generations, from you talking about your grandpa selling the farm and giving the kids away and then having another 10 and him passing away, and now there's 19 kids with holes in their heart. It happens. Like my dad is one of 18. He's still surviving. My mom was one of 9. Her dad passed away when she was 14. They probably would have had more children. But whether or not there was abuse or there was, too harsh of lessons being taught, when you lose somebody, there's a hole in your heart. Well, in your circumstance, and on top of that, all those 19 kids have abuse issues, they have abandonment issues, most likely, right? There's just it's just amazing. And learned behavior is so powerful in our lives. I look at the fact of the things my dad learned from his parents or my mom, the things I picked up without knowing. Like I was talking about this actually yesterday with somebody and saying self-awareness for a young child is almost impossible but they hear everything that goes on in a home. They see what happens around them in circumstances with relatives, friends, obviously their immediate family, and it develops them. They become a young adult, and now they have patterns of behavior. Like that lady saying, your sister-in-law saying that you guys have anger issues, right? That's the only thing you have. Learn behavior. Self-awareness doesn't necessarily happen to us as a child or as an adult. We have to sometimes have things happen to us, certain circumstances, tragedies, trials, tribulations that make us be self-aware. But that doesn't mean we're going to change. That doesn't mean we're going to take the path, least taken, and start being willing to be vulnerable, skin our knees and stuff like that, like you did. So I want to start and say, congratulations. That's good for you to getting to a point where you are now and being willing to be vulnerable and stepping out of your comfort zone. Because as you know, no success for any of us is achieved without stepping outside of our comfort zone, being willing to admit that we are weak, and being, for me, I'm a Christian as well, and giving it up to God, right? Just, what is your will, Lord? Like, I don't like where I'm at in my life. And, people say, well, I'm going to pray to God and he's going to change all this stuff. No, he's not. You're going to pray to God for direction, focus. He's going to send people to you. And now are you self-aware enough to realize that, hey, Dwight, you're having some struggles. Paul's a pretty cool guy. He has a conversation with you. Connect with him. He can help you. He can help you heal. He can help you move forward. He can help you with relationships with others and learn how to give away things that can help you better your own life. Like, there's so many things that we as a society wish for. Like, I look at people in society, those listening or watching on YouTube, how many times in your life, or maybe you've done it yourself, where you've lost somebody, or a tragedy has occurred and maybe nobody's passed away, but a tragedy or trial, tribulation has occurred, and you blame God, but yet you've never prayed to God. Yet you're not a faith-bearing person. You're not somebody that's ever sacrificed or lived a life of faith, right? But yet that's the go-to in society, it seems, around the world, to blame God, to blame Jesus, really. And at the end of the day, I believe in what we were taught, right? After what happened with it, as far back as Noah's Ark, God said, I'm not going to interfere, right? You can't have your cake and eat it too. That saying works. Like, society, give it up to praying helps me reconcile things. God responds to me. Sometimes I don't listen. I'm a stubborn SOB sometimes, Paul, right? Sometimes I don't listen to what God's telling me, and I'll pray about the same thing again, get the same darn response, right? It's just like, okay, I hear you. I'm going to listen. Okay, I'm going to try doing this, right? Oh, I'm drowning, right? And God sends all these people to try to save me. You know the old story. And that, and go up to the pearly gates, and God says, well, what more did you want me to give you? I was sending people to help you, and you weren't self-aware and awake enough to accept help from others. So I believe we get stronger in life by giving it up to God, accepting help from others that are sent to us by him, right? But most of all, quit blaming others. Look at yourself in the mirror and realize that if it's to be, it really is up to me. I need to put in the hard work. I got to be willing to be tenacious and realize that today, the day that I thought was going to be fantastic, I had some character building moments. It wasn't the day that I thought it was, but what can I pull out of it that was good? Learn to be grateful, learn to have gratitude. So, I really appreciate, there's so many things that we could unpack from your origin story. It's amazing, from getting your sister setting you up on a date with somebody 7 hours away, and and what attracted you? The humor. You didn't have to have a face-to-face. It was emails. It was the written word. And that's another thing I'll add too. How many people today in this world don't understand the word and understand that you need to be a wordsmith? You need to understand that one word can trigger somebody and it means one thing, but you can use another word that means the exact same thing and people are understanding. right? So you owe it to yourself, because why would you want to say things to others that make them angry or agitated to a point like you were talking about with your dad stacking it, right? Then you've seen it with your brother living with him, and then you've seen it with yourself, right? Why we owe it to ourselves to be able to communicate with others. And the love languages help that. It help us give people stuff so that we feel good, right? And I've developed my own coaching around that principle, and in the life coaching I've been doing with my finance practice for 21 years, and then the life's just this life coaching of people that it isn't involving finance. That you know what, life's in session. It's in a dress rehearsal. You've got to put in some effort, and just like somebody that gains 200 pounds, it took them 10 years and they want to lose it overnight. It isn't going to happen. It's going to take time. It's going to take consistency. It's going to take reflection, and it's going to take effort in order for you to live a purposeful life. In order to live a life of gratefulness, you got to practice gratefulness, right? You need to, it is what it is. We need to put effort in. So I really appreciate you sharing. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we go on?
Yeah, when you were talking about the stories in the Bible and stories of Jesus, there's just one thing that I use for introspection for me that kind of keeps me in check. And you remember the question that or the statement that Jesus made at the Last Supper. He said to all the disciples, he said, "One of you will betray me." And it wasn't just one that said this, but it was every single one of them said, "Lord, is it I?" And I find that phrase very valuable in our own lives, just to question in a prayer sense. Lord, is it I? Am I part of the problem, or am I the problem? And ask for solutions. How can I become better so that I am not the problem? So I'm not the one that's betraying the teachings of Jesus Christ, or not the one betraying good behavior in my own life. Just ask the question, Lord, is it I? And I really think that's been valuable for me to find out where I'm at. One other thing on that is I found a stick that I went walking the other day. Found a stick, and this is a stick. It doesn't have any bark on it at all. One side of the stick, you can put your hand on. It's really nice and smooth. Really very nice side of the stick. The other side, though, has these little point parts where maybe there was a branch or something, but it has a few knots on it. I'm going to call this the naughty side of the stick. So it's my nice and naughty stick, naughty and nice. And I know Santa Claus has a stick looks just like that, Dwight. That's how you get your presents. I know you didn't know that, but most kids know that. So I had 8 kids, so they all knew that. So the naughty and nice stick, I realized when I went into my sister-in-law, I realized that I was on that naughty side of the stick. Anger was right there at that naughty side of the stick. And it was almost a self-actualization right there, that I had 3 choices. I could stay the same, get worse, or get better. Stay the same looks like, well, I can continue to blame everybody else. That way you're not changing, you're not doing anything, you're not progressing, you're not digressing. You kind of are digressing, but you're just staying the same because it's their fault. You blame them. Or I could get angry. I could get more angry, learn the culture of being more angry. Or I could go toward, I put love on the other end of the stick. So I decided I really wanted that loving culture. I had learned the culture of anger, the culture of the angry humor, the put downs, the vocabulary, just the whole language of anger. On that culture, I'd learned it very well when I was a child. I didn't like that culture at all. I wanted to have a different culture in my life. So I really needed the love languages. I really needed to know, what is the vocabulary of love? What are the things that we do in loving humor? And it's not a put down, but it makes somebody laugh, but it just doesn't make them feel bad about themselves or another person. And it's just a different culture altogether. It's almost like I was just transported, or I've been working on being transported from an anger culture and a tradition or a generational angry culture now to a more loving culture. And it's a whole different life. It's absolutely a different life. It's a great, much better lifestyle, that's for sure.
Oh, Absolutely. It's the dark side to the light side. It really is. It's, people say, there's people that are probably watching or listening to this that are thinking to themselves, well, or they have thought about it, or they do consistently, like, look what that person's got, look what they've achieved and accomplished, and they're jealous. But they don't see the fact that if they open up the doors of that person's life, the trials and tribulations they went through, maybe they had anger issues, maybe they had violence issues going within their life, and they turned themselves around. And it took a lot of work. Nobody's an overnight success. It takes effort. It could, like people will go, oh, that person's so lucky. Look what they accomplished. Yeah, that luck took me 20 years. That luck took me 10 years. That luck took me however many years. What's those listening, don't look at others and think to yourself, my, look what they've accomplished. Blah, 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 blah. They probably took advantage of somebody. They probably did this and that. Instead, look at them and go, what can I learn from that person? Am I close enough that I can, put myself out there and have a conversation? Oh, maybe not. Maybe I need to do some personal development on my own. Find a great book. Find yourself a good podcast. There's so many ways that you can change and pivot your mindset. It all starts with one little baby step, and understanding that anger is the worst way to live a life, right? Living a life of gratefulness and gratitude based on faith and finding joy every single day. Like when I go to bed at night, my gratefulness exercise, I do it. I wake up in the morning and I do it before I start my day, because at the end of the day, I have more abundance than most on the planet. I've had to work at it. And I will till the day I take my last breath. But I realize that without effort, I would stay stuck. And those listening or watching, you don't have to stay stuck. You can reach out to people like Paul or myself. It's simply a decision that you're sick and tired of being sick and tired. So I appreciate that, Paul. Thank you so much. So as we talked about, I'm a fan of the 5 love languages, and it's so refreshing to have somebody that understands that, that book itself. It's been used for 30 plus years to motivate and help people understand what makes others tick, to help them elevate how they respectfully treat others, and because it does come back on you. So it's worked for, I use it myself, family, friends, work associates, and clients, right? And it works. It really does. It takes effort. I won't say it's always easy. Sometimes there's, excuse me, sometimes a little backlashes, just because people are so sensitive, right? They don't want to be understood. They'd rather be thought of as an angry person or, distasteful person. But you come out with your book and Rule of Love, and your unique system of demonstrating and implementing the love languages to people, including the dice that you just showed us, which I wasn't aware of. That's pretty cool. Could you please tell us about your book, Rule of Love, and exactly what a person can expect throughout the process of your book?
Yes, of course, Dwight. Thank you very, very much for that question. I wrote the book actually at the request of a mental health specialist. So just a year ago, a year and a half ago, in March of last year, I was visiting with a mental health specialist about him implementing or putting this into his therapy sessions. He does therapy for youth and youth camps and that sort of thing. I thought, wouldn't that be great to teach the youth all the love languages, have them learn them all so that they'd be able to watch and be more sensitive to the way people like to be loved. And one of the things that I've discovered, Dwight, through the rolling the die for the first 30-day period, and subsequently I've had the die copyright for it since 2017. So that's all I had at the time when I'm visiting with this mental health specialist. But one of the things I found is that after about 30 days of rolling the die and knowing the love language backwards and forwards, you begin to, when you're practicing whatever it is that you're practicing that day, you begin to watch. And I call it the role of observation in the book. And I go through that role of observation is very integral for being able to know how to love people. what you're watching for, especially, is that you're watching for people to light up. When they light up, no longer do you have to say, hold on a second. Can we pause the relationship for a minute? I want you to take this survey so I know how to love you. You don't have to do that anymore. What you do now is just watch when they light up. That's either a primary or secondary love language. You take a mental note and then you just wash, rinse, repeat. You do it over and over again. And we're really focused on people developing their own skills. That's what the book's all about. Develop your own skills so that it's going to be with you. It's going to be inside you. It's going to be the role of love. And I spell it, it's kind of like the title of your show, Dwight, and your last name, heck, and give a heck. They're two kind of play on words. You're playing with your last name, which is different. That's you. And you're playing with the word heck itself. This is the same thing. ROLE is what I have on the book. It changes you within. But to the die or the cube, you're doing ROLL, outside of you. So you're doing something outside of you that can be a change or a force for good inside of you. You're purposely doing something on the outside so that it changes you on the inside. And that's what the whole book's about. This is what the book looks like, just a roll of love. And it's it's available on, the Audible version is available on Amazon as well. So if you have Audible on Amazon, you can definitely read the book in that way. A lot of people listening to the podcast are also listeners of books. That's a very viable option. I highly recommend it. Unfortunately, the printing press and the Audible version are two different components of Amazon. And then having a store is where I'd have to have the die. And I only have the die. I only have a one-item store, and I'm for the trouble to make a one-item store, I'm just not doing that. So I'm selling the die only on my website. You can buy the book and the journal through my website, but I'm only selling the die on my website, not rolloflove.com. So the book is really kind of the backstory that we're talking about right now of how this came to be. How did this role of love and my change come to be? Because I really wasn't like this, like I am right now. I really wasn't like that 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And it was unfortunate that my children had a lot of those times where I would flash. And I didn't think I definitely know that I was not as harsh as my father, but there were times that I was harsh. And I did not want that to be passed on to the next generation. For the most part, my kids are doing great. They're all very good parents, except for a few that don't have children right now, but they're all very good parents at just understanding and trying to help their children learn what they need to learn. They're very cautious that they're not on top of them if it's the first time that they're doing something. And what I found with this, Dwight, is now with these love languages, I'm also stacking, but I'm stacking love on top of love on top of love on top of love. And what that amounts to is that I consider these love languages basic, very basic, and basic stair steps to get to the higher love laws like compassion or charity or forgiveness or sympathy or empathy. Those are higher laws of love. And but you've got to do these basics. You absolutely have to have these basics and stack these basics. And now it's an expression that stacking these loving incidences, instead of stacking the annoyances, stacking these loving incidences to get to those higher laws. I really think it's possible for everyone to do that.
Fantastic. One of the things that people might be wondering, because I am wondering, you can go right to your book and never have read 5 love languages.
Right.
That's perfect, because sometimes it's hard for people to introduce a book into their life, whether it's Audible or it's in print. And I'm glad that you've made it so that it's just a one-stop shop, right? Obviously, you talk about your website. We'll make sure that goes in the show notes and stuff so people can easily find you. But bottom line, it's if you're going to pick up one book and you're going to understand the love languages, though I haven't had the pleasure yet, which I will because I'm a huge Audible fan, I'd recommend The Role of Love, because it's going to articulate the love languages, but take you to that next elevated level, like you talked about compassion, charity, forgiveness, right? But you
Absolutely.
also talk about the basics. That is a well-rounded thing. So congratulations.
Thank
That I'm certainly looking forward to that. And it's just amazing though, the journey you've gone on and what you've been through to come to this point. And for those that don't believe in God, that's fine. You can believe and do whatever you want, but I'm a faith-bearing person, and God is shining on society through you with what you've developed. So again, congratulations.
Thank you very much. And Dwight, I feel like I've had so many opportunities for anger in my life that I've got to do a lot of loving to erase that, or if there's even that's even possible. And anger's like taking a little piece of paper, tearing it into tiny bits of paper, and then throwing it up to the wind, and then go collect all those pieces. How are you going to do that? How are you ever going to recover that? And I'm not sure that I even can, but I'm trying my hardest to send out love in place of those torn up pieces of paper, of anger pieces. In place of that, try to send out as much love, or 10 times more love than I was ever angry. And so that's kind of where my life is at right now. A lot of stuff to do. I'm just, for example, right now in the community I live in, we're testing the die in the school. So at the beginning of the class, the teacher rolls the die, and it takes 2 seconds to roll the die, or the cube. It takes 2 seconds to roll it, and the teacher maybe take 30 seconds, maybe 45 seconds at the most, explain, now class, this is the kind of opportunities we're watching for today. At the end of the day, I developed a journal, so that for the journal, they can write what they rolled, what opportunities they saw to love in that way, and then what they did about those opportunities. So it actually becomes an opportunity for these teachers, and I'm working K-6 right now, these teachers of these young children, to teach them responsibility. No longer do these children have to wait till age 35 to realize, oh, I'm responsible for my own life. I'm responsible for my own actions. Now they have to be accountable for what they did during the day. And at the end of the day, the teacher just do a check mark, whether they did it or not, whether they wrote the journal page or not. For those people that have written in the journal, I've got a collaborative process that I'm working with, a Yogurtland franchisee here in town. He will give a child 5 ounces of yogurt for free if they did it for 15 days of the month. If they do it for 25 days of the month, which is right that sweet spot, Dwight, between 21 to 28 days is the habit forming process. If they do it for 25 days of the month, they'll give them 10 ounces of yogurt for free. So there's a little incentive for the kids there to be able to do that. I'm looking for corporate sponsors like that in your community, Dwight, in all the communities around the world. Anybody that's listening to this podcast, they can incorporate this in school. Let's, as a community, try to tamp down a lot of the misbehaving, tamp down the bullying, tamp down the violence that goes on in the school system, to the teachers or to each other, to everybody in that school system. Tamp that down, and let's do it in this loving way. Teach them love. As I mentioned earlier, what I found was focusing on this for a 30-day period, I had zero time to be annoyed at what other people were doing. When I realized that it doesn't matter what other people are doing, I can't change that. That's their choice. When I realized that and realized what the boundaries were of my own lane, I realized that this is something I can do. And this is something each student can do for themselves. Roll the die, watch for opportunities to love in that way, report about it at the end of the day. And at the end of that year, what it becomes to that child is a love journal. So the teacher will check whether it was done or not. They send the paper home. Those parents that are astute and keeping up on what's going on in the school will keep that page. And hopefully every day that child's in school for that whole school year, there'll be a page. I bind those together at the end of the year. Now what do you have? You have a love journal for that first grader. a love journal for that third grader or that fifth grader, whatever it is, that they've got a love journal. Absolutely would have loved to have a journal like that for myself, or even from my mother. My mother's journal and my grandmother's journal talked about the weather. Dwight, the weather 60 years ago. Who cares about the weather? I can read an almanac to find out about the weather, but who's going to read an almanac? I mean, it's just, I would love to have a love journal like that. And especially in those young formative years. I remember my first grade teacher, Mrs. Rogers. I remember her name because there must have been some wonderful kindnesses that were done. I remember it all in a good light. That she must have been so kind. I wish I would have had my first grade journal to be able to highlight what was it about Mrs. Rogers that I loved? What was it about her that made her special in my eyes in that first grade? And hopefully I would have articulated that or at least had some semblance of clues of what it was that I liked about Mrs. Rogers during that time. I think kids would like that.
Oh yeah, that's great. Excuse me, your explanation of what you're doing in the schools. That was a question I actually put down I was going to ask you. So I'm glad that the conversation flowed into that. Is how can it help out, school age children? What have you seen yourself though with how it's changed adults? Have what's your experience has been? Have you had conversations with adults that have seen positive reflection and change, and that has brought them back to God's pure love?
Absolutely. And there's a couple that I have tested this with, and they kind of knew what their love languages were, and she did not like gifts, but he knew that she liked words. But one day he rolled he rolled the cube, and it came up to be gifts. And he said, "Okay, I'll do that." And he had to be creative about it. What he ended up doing was write a note and put it into a package and then gave that. She was absolutely delighted for that. And I think that it really, when we understand, this is going to create understanding, and with understanding creates peace in our lives. And I think that adults see that as well as children will be able to latch on that very quickly. I think it's going to tamp down a lot of the angry things that happen in families. If we're always watching out, we're trying to uplift one another. We're trying to make that person have a better day. And when we do that, that's how we get paid. So we're sending this love out without any expectation of it coming back, but trusting in the law of the harvest, trusting in karma, or trusting in the law of attraction, whatever one of those or any other law like that, or even boomerangs, trusting that it's going to come back to us someday. But don't expect it. It's coming back someday, but we have no expectation of it coming back. This is a lot like that we send this out, and if we get an attitude like that we're just going to be loving, just choose to be loving every single day. Adults are glomming onto that. They really want something like that in their life. They really want that to happen for their adult relationships, but also relationships with other children or with their parents. They want that. I think adults.
Absolutely. It's amazing what, how things can change. And you talked about the husband being creative and putting that note in a box and stuff. It forces us to actually have to look at circumstances and situations and put some thought into it, and not just take the easy way out. It builds, community through them, because they're a community themselves. And then by him doing what she needs or vice versa, now they go out into the community and spread their kindness. And it is, you mentioned, it's a choice. It definitely is a choice. Every single day when I wake up, it's a choice. It's a choice throughout my day never to have a bad day. I know my listeners have heard me talk about it many times. I developed something very simplistic over the years that I coach people on and talk to them about: the 70-30 principle. The principle of in your life, only associating with things and people that make you feel good. 30% of the time, it kind of makes you feel you're indifferent about it, or you can walk away from it. But 70% of the time, the people or things you associate with that you read or watch make you feel glad, right? And that's a choice. That's a choice on my part to be that way. It's a choice on my part to never have a bad day. I've been coaching and working on that. It's going on to my 5th year of doing just that. But it's a choice, right? Everything we do is a choice. We have to make that decision. What are we going to do today? What are we going to experience? What are we going to tell ourselves, right? What are we telling others? What are we projecting? So those listening and watching this, we're not saying that any of this is easy. It's not hard either. It just takes some commitment. It takes you deciding enough is enough. You're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and that you want to step outside of your comfort zone of the current emotional, which it is, very emotional level that you're currently living at. And if that emotional level is always triggering you to go to anxiety or depression, or maybe both, because that can happen in the same moment, you know what? It's never too late to give a heck about yourself. We care about you and we don't even know you. You just have to reach out and have a conversation with either of us, and we'll see how we can help you, right? Paul's book, I would highly recommend. I honestly can't wait to get it now on Audible and listen to it and elevate myself to that next level of where I've been practicing now for 30 years with the 5 love languages. So thank you so much, Paul. I appreciate that. Like, honestly, what you've committed to and developed and shared, and that's less than an hour so far, it's going to change people's lives. I honestly believe that.
I hope so. I hope it'll change it for the much better. And just we need to create a better world. If we're going to make it happen, we've got to do it one at a time.
People say it can happen, but it happens one at a time, and maybe it takes generations past us being gone to make a difference, but it's a snowball effect that has to start with one. So, Paul, if you had to give our listeners one last closing message, what would you tell them in regards to giving a heck and never giving up?
Dwight, that's a great question, and thank you for it. One thing that I really like is the languages, and it's just something that I 40 years ago I learned Japanese, and just learning different languages has been something that I like. After 30 days of doing this, you become what I like to call a love language linguist. Sexy title, Dwight. I know you want it. I know all your listeners want that title too. You can get that title if you know the love languages backwards and forwards. But one thing about language is that there's a Sanskrit dialect in northern India where we get the words like nirvana, and we get the word karma. But the word I want to talk about that we get from that Sanskrit dialect is namaste. And namaste is one of those words where maybe you hear it at the end of a yoga class, and the teacher or this person putting their hands together, the fingers pointing together, pointing north, and the thumb toward the chest, and they're bowing their head, closing their eyes, and say namaste. Now, it doesn't mean class is over, even though that's what they do at the end of classes. It doesn't mean, hey, y'all, class is over, you can go. What the Hindu interpretation is, it's very sacred, and it's something that I really like. What it means is that it means that the God in me sees the God in you, or the divine in me sees the divine in you. And I think that this is what we're trying to accomplish here, Dwight, that we're trying to give a heck about one another, really care about another person, and understand that they are also divine. I'm divine. I feel like I'm a child of God. That person also is the child of God. That we don't lift one another above one another, but that we see the divine in each other and express that divine in each other. If we do that, I believe that we're going to see the good of the world. We're going to see the good of everyone, and there will be good in everyone that we can see. It's just one of those things that I think that we take that to heart. It sounds so easy to roll the die every day, and it really is very easy, but don't make it sound too easy, because as you mentioned already, Dwight, it's going to take some work, but I've tried to make it as easy as possible. You'll notice that on the cube that they're all pictures. When you roll the die or roll the cube and you see the picture, hopefully that picture will be in your mind. and it'll stay with you all day long, so that you will see the divine in that other person. And practice it. Just practice sending the love out every day. Do what we can.
Exactly. Do what we can, make an effort, and it takes commitment every day, right? And you can build that habit muscle, like you talked about earlier in our conversation. Habits take so many days, just like with those kids, 15 days, 5 ounces, right? And it goes on from there. If they work harder, they get more. Excuse me. You'll get more, both of us will get more. So the people that implement processes where they're always being grateful and trying different things and stepping out on faith is important, right? And a lot of people don't do that. So our time is almost up, and I want to respect our listeners and your time. However, before we end, can you please tell the listeners what's the best way they can reach you?
The best way, Dwight, is through my website. It's roleoflove.com, ROLE of love.com, where I have a bundle special right now. You can get the journal, you can get the book, you can get the cube, all for the low price of $29.99. That's a whole lot less than even just one therapy session. So if you think of it in that regard, this is something that you'll practice every single day. Even those listeners that may be taking therapy right now, they don't go every day. I doubt they do. They may go once a week, or they may go once every 2 weeks. This will be the stopgap measure that will keep them on track to love every single day. They can find all that on my website. If they do want the Audible version, again, go to Amazon. You don't want to type in Roll of Love on Amazon. You want to type in my name, Paul Zolman. If you type in Roll of Love, you're going to get a million love this, love that, love everything. And it's just going to be a needle in the haystack. Type in my name, it'll come right up. On Amazon, you can also buy the book and the die, or excuse me, the book and the journal. The die is only available on my website.
Fantastic. I'll make sure that goes in the show notes. For people new to the show, watching or listening, go to giveaheck.com and go into the portal for podcast, and you will see a picture of Paul, and you will see the information, abbreviated show notes on where to contact him, and the information he just shared, I'll make sure is in there. Any last closing words, Paul?
I think we got it. Thank
Fantastic.
you. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, you too. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. So thanks so much for being on Give a Heck, Paul. I appreciate your time and sharing some of your experiences so that others too can learn it is never too late to give a heck. Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.